What were the PSIWARS on ancient Terra? Who were the Cognosynths, an ancient order of Psykers around before the Emperor? What did they do? Did the Big E stop them? How did they build the city of Sight, the headquarters later of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica? Friends, let's find out, and welcome to another 40k video, drawing on The Outcast Dead by Graham McNeil. Ibn Khaldun and the astropath splayed his mind outwards into the echoing space of the vast chamber in which he lay, fashioned in the form of a great amphitheatre, the heart of the Whispering Tower. This chamber had been shaped by the ancient Cognosynths, who first raised the city of Sight many thousands of years ago. Their unrivaled knowledge of psychically attuned architecture had been hard-won in a long-forgotten age of devastating PSIWARS, but their arts were long dead, and the skill of crafting such resonant structures had died with them. Amid the blackened mind halls of the city of Sight, the Whispering Tower reached the farthest into the gulfs of space between the stars, no matter what lofty claims the Emperor's grand architects might make of the ornamented spires they had built around it. The Whispering Tower, for those who don't know, is where a class of secretive astropaths live. And there are many darker rumours about them, aren't there, with everyone in 40k? Some say they assess messages that come to the city of Sight and make sure no warp contamination is there. A sort of psychic defence for the city. But let's stay back to the Cognosynths. Kai had heard fanciful tales of powerful Psykers who were able to invade the dreams of sleepers and alter their mindscapes. But the last such Cognosynth was said to have died thousands of years ago. I presume you have heard of the PSIWARS? Kai nodded. Athena continues. Of course you have. You would be ignorant Psykers indeed, had you not, truth be told. Little is known of these global wars with any certainty, just fragments culled from surviving records that escaped the purges of its aftermath. We believe they began, as all wars do, with ambition and greed, driving things, but it soon became clear that the warrior kings at each other's throats were being directed by the will of power-mad individuals hidden in the shadows. Now, Psykers are an uncommon mutation. Perhaps one child in a million may be born with some latent power, and of those children, perhaps a tenth will have power worth harnessing. The gene code for the Cognosynths is 2 orders of magnitude rarer still. Now I want you to understand what that means, for it is not just a hyperbolic phrase. Cognosynths are considerably rarer than any normal Psyker. So to have many arise on old Earth at once was an event so singular as to demand its own epoch. And no one wanted to remember a time where psychic powers almost destroyed the world. Funny how history repeats in 40k. Least of all the Psykers themselves. Eventually it came to light that the great states of the world were simply pawns for powerful individuals who set nation against nation for their own savage amusement. No normal telepath could have done this, only one with the unique power of a Cognosynth. Why would anyone want to do that? Gregorus shrugged but said, You know the lure of psychic powers, Zolena. Despite the dangers, every astropath acquires a taste for using their powers. Once your mind touches the immaterium, it craves that wellspring of limitless potential, like nothing else. Do you remember the first time you used your powers? Yes, said Kai. It was intoxicating. So a cabal, but not the cabal of Psykers, ruling the world. It's kind of like something like the Illuminati myth on our world, a few at the top running everything. The Cognosynths could maintain that first sensation, said Gregorus. Every time they touched the warp was like the first time. They became addicted to the power, and perhaps the power and control over others that it gave them. And it is said they were virtually immune to the dangers of the warp. No immaterial creature could touch them. Could that be some sort of pariah gene perhaps? Doubtful, but you never know. And without limits on their power and ambitions, the Cognosynths became obsessed with dominating as they judge it, lesser men, believing that they alone could control the destiny of the species. They are full of hubris, these guys, and they had the power to do it. So it's shown here as almost an addition, and we are told they were immune to the warp in this time. I imagine genetics technology could have been good, and maybe like the librarians or the Grey Knights, the genetics and minds could be changed in some way to make them immune. There's nothing stated about that here, but you never know. They could go into your mind and do anything at all, repeated Gregorus. For example, I could no more compel you to throttle Mistress Dios than I could have you slit your own throat with a sharp blade. Nor, I suspect, could I convince you of the dissonant beauty of Dada's anti-symphony, no matter how hard I tried. Most people own innate sense of self-preservation and understanding of right and wrong are too ingrained to be overcome even with certain types of psychic powers. But a Cognosynth could make you his puppet. With no more effort than breathing, he could compel you to perform unimaginable acts of horror and make you laugh as you did them. He could erase your memories, graft new ones in their place, and make you see what he wants you to see. Any illusion he wants to give you is yours. Feel what he wants you to feel. Nothing of the spaces in your mind that makes you who you are would be beyond his reach. Just think of that level of interference. You are at the mercy of another and their whims, merely a conduit for them to do anything they please with your thoughts and memories, who you are, etc. The legends say a great warrior with golden eyes arose, the only man whose will was strong enough to resist the influence of the Cognosynths. He rallied the armies of those few kingdoms left and trained a cadre of warriors like no others, stronger, faster and tougher than any of the great bands of old. One by one they stormed the citadels of the Cognosynths on the back of great silver flying machines. Not ever the most powerful Cognosynth, or even the most powerful Cognosynth, it would be better to say, could dominate the golden-eyed warrior, and every time he slew one of these Psyker devils, the enslaved armies were freed from bondage and willingly joined the forces of the great warrior. It took another 30 years, but eventually his armies brought down the last Cognosynth, and the people of the world were free again. And what became of the warrior? Asked Kai. No one knows for sure. Some legends say he was killed in the battle with the last Cognosynth. Others that he tried to take power himself and was killed by his men. Gregorus paused, and a wrinkle at the side of his mouth told Kai he was smiling. The gesture was unsettling, like the death grin of a corpse. Some even say the warrior still lives among us, waiting for the day when the power of the Cognosynths returns. Could this be the master of mankind? Could he have done this, brought down the Cognosynths? Perhaps he had a long life and took on many roles throughout history. For all he can do when he does emerge and begins to unite the Empire with his custodians and Thunder Warriors, he has to have learned the Genecraft and Warcraft from somewhere, even if it was pulling it from someone else's mind and using it that way. I think he also must have had setbacks. We're all shaped by the knowledge and experiences of our past. Could his experience with the Synths have shaped his thoughts on the dangers of Psykers, along with Old Night and the Warp, of course? We can only say maybe, but it's a fun idea. And could the Emperor himself be one of them, a secret origin that seems to be less talked about? Again, we will never know, but fun to speculate. He could operate on their level, I think, in terms of power, and the final reveal about the extent of a Cognosynth's power. No psychic discipline of which Gregorus was aware could transport the psychic body of an individual over so great a distance. So how had they done it? Legend told that the Cognosynths could open gateways through space and time. The webway perhaps, but even the most outlandish tales only spoke of travel from one side of the planet to another. To travel between worlds would require the greatest mind the galaxy had ever seen. Gregorus had told Zelane that the Cognosynths were all gone, but might the Emperor have created another in the form of Magnus, like he created a sort of perpetual with Vulcan? Maybe. And on that intriguing note, I'll end this video. Please comment down below with your thoughts on the lore and the theories.